Father in heaven, you have given most of mankind a strong desire to do good, to be honest, to serve others, and to faithfully fulfill their obligations to their neighbors. Help us as Rotarians and humans to do good. Help us as Rotarians and humans to be honest and ethical in all of our dealings. Help us as Rotarians and humans to serve others. And help us as Rotarians and humans to faithfully fulfill our obligations as neighbors to our community, our nation, and the world. Please bless each and every one of us as we move through our lives this week. Please lift up our fellow Rotarians who could not be here with us today for whatever reason. Please protect our neighbors in the path of Hurricane Florence. And finally, please bless the food and the hands who prepared it so that we may strengthen our bodies and serve this wonderful community. In your name we pray. Amen.
Very nice, Carrie, as always. Very nice. We have Rebecca Gunlogson on the way up. Rebecca's a relatively new member of the club, and she's going to offer our fellowship today and introduce visiting Rotarians and guests.
Good afternoon. We have a few visiting Rotarians with us. First of all, we have Eric Davis from the Vista Nights Club. Welcome, Eric. Glad you're here. Next, we have Matt Morrison with the Main Street Club. And finally, we have Craig Curry with the Spring Valley Rotary Club.
Today. I work at Transitions Homeless Center. We're having a duck race, so we're the people with the large inflatable duck. Thank you for supporting. We will be around after. These ducks will be dropped in the river, and one duck per ticket, and obviously the winning duck is $2,500. So we're grateful for any support you have. Every ticket that you buy, 100% of that money now goes to Transitions. So thank you very much.
If you didn't get your duck, you still have the opportunity to get it out front. And then anybody who has a guest visiting with us today, please stand, and we will, Adam will come around and bring you the microphone so you can introduce them.
Well, I'm Louisa Campbell, and I'm happy to have as my guest today, Yamba Sowers. She is from Irmo, lives in Irmo, but at one time she was president of our Rotary Club at Berkeley High School. So please welcome Yamba.
I'm Michael Kahn, and I'm delighted to have with me today Dr. Mark Smith, president of CIU and a Rotarian.
Desk when Mark Rock came in. He has an old friend that was a Rotarian, but he's visiting with us today, and please welcome Mark to get a chance to take it.
I'll just use this one. Kim, if you'll stand. I have Kim Mitchell with me today. She's with Castle Brothers Heating and Cooling. She's the leads coordinator with them. Welcome, Kim. Glad to have you.
Rebecca, and welcome to all of our visiting Rotarians and guests. It's good to have so many of you here today. I also want to point out Eric Davis, who was introduced as a member of the Vista Nights Club. He is also our assistant district governor. He's been here a couple times before. Used to be a member of this club, and always good to have our assistant district governor here with us. Thank you, Eric. Karen Blackman. Karen is going to offer our help and happiness today. She's on her way up. Talk all about the great things that happened this past weekend. Except for the Carolina football game.
We won't talk about that. I killed the mic. Okay, I've got a couple of unhappy things to report today. One is that Marie Cinema, wife of longtime former member Dave Cinema, died last Tuesday, and her funeral was on Saturday at Shandon Presbyterian. If y'all can't hear me, tell me. I can't tell when I'm speaking. There you go. All right. Well, I can stand up too. And also, more immediately, the father of Billy Canty, our member, Bill Canty Jr., passed away on Friday the 9th. Visitation is at Chives this Thursday from 5 to 7 at the Trenton Road Extension location, and the service is at Trinity at 3 p.m. Friday, so our deepest condolences to Billy on his loss. On a lighter note, Harry may not agree with this, but Harry Jeffcoat has an 8-week-old at home and he's getting no sleep. So but keep that in mind. And another thing that might keep you awake a little bit this week is that Florence is now a Category 4 storm. So as we heard in the prayer, please keep folks that are in the path of that in your thoughts and prayers, because this has the potential to be not a very good thing. And tomorrow is 9/11, the anniversary of the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. So please keep the victims and families of those that were impacted, which was all of us really, in your prayers. And pray for our country that we could find some unity that we found after those 9/11 attacks. Because we really came together as a country, and we need to do that again. So yesterday at 6 started Rosh Hashanah, which is the beginning of the Jewish New Year. So with that in mind, I thought I would give us some things that would allow us to get our New Year in a happier frame of mind. I took this information from a Dr. Kim Foster, who's a neurosurgeon in New Mexico. So she's done a lot of research on it, and we all know that there's a big connection in health and science and happiness. But one of the things that she found out doing her research is that while you can't find one thing that's a key to happiness, you can often find things that are a key to keeping you happier and make you happier in your life. One is practice gratitude. So you'll see a lot of these things have to do with our 4-way test and Rotary and being of service. But make a habit of reminding yourself and keep a journal of the things that you're thankful for. So don't dwell on things that are negative, dwell on things that are blessings that you're thankful for. Be an optimist, replace your negative thoughts with positive ones. Enrich your life with supportive, loving friends and family, and she didn't have this on here, but I know it's true, and a pet, preferably a dog. Because they're really good at making you feel good about yourself. Build good relationships and friendships. Forget about the Joneses and concern yourself with your own life. Avoid the trap of constantly comparing yourself to others. Be mindful and live in the present. Actively cultivate and practice stress management. Fill your life with meaningful pursuits. Work towards something that's bigger than yourself. I think service among self is obvious there. Don't rage against the machine. Learn to accept what you can't change. And help others, again, that service aspect of happiness. So I think if we keep our minds focused on happy, positive things, then we'll be more happy in our life. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Appreciate you doing that today. One other note on health, something I found out this morning, I wanted to make everybody aware. The founder of the CART Fund was a man named Roger Ackerman. The reason I say was is he passed away last night. Many of you knew Roger. You know of his contributions to the Sumter Rotary Club, to Rotary International. He founded the CART Fund, which has become a multi-million-dollar fundraiser for Alzheimer's research. Please be thinking of Deanie, his wife, and his family. It's a difficult time for them. And also maybe use this time, if it's in your charitable giving plan for the year, to think about the CART Fund maybe next week. Put a reminder on the calendar to write a check or something in his honor. I think that would be very nice. So please keep Roger's family, Deanie, and others in your prayers. Thank you. Mason Hardy is going to offer a Paul Harris Fellow Award for us today. So we'll give him the microphone.
Thank you, President Stephen. I was a member of the Sumter Rotary Club with Roger. I was glad to be a member. He's a great guy. I'm sorry to hear that he passed. We did know that he was not doing well. Yeah, we did. Also wanted to point out another sad note and point out that Billy Canty is one of my best friends, and his father did pass away. He's also the brother-in-law of Louisa Campbell. So I wanted to point that out, also a member of our club. But today, I'm honored to see a friend and family member of my own that we don't get to see very often because he's enjoying vacations and retirement these days. And we're going to present a Paul Harris Fellow +3 to Carol Hayward, who's here with us today between vacations. And we're glad to have Carol with us today. Thank you, Carol. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all your support of the foundation. I did want to give a quick foundation update. I get these emails from time to time. We now have 15 cases worldwide of polio. That's 12 in Afghanistan, 3 in Pakistan. That's compared with 10 cases that we had last year, so it has gone up slightly. But Nigeria needs 12 more consecutive months of no reported polio cases to be considered eradicated from Nigeria. So we're making progress. Keep up the contributions, and we'll keep up the good work. Thank you for all that y'all do for Rotary International Foundation. Thanks.
Thank you, Mason. I appreciate your work as our Rotary International Committee Chairman this year. Congratulations, Carol. Always great to have you here at the meeting. Just a little segue. So your contributions to Rotary International also benefit our local community. Anderson Bass is going to come up and talk to you a little bit about our service project that's planned for next Saturday. We applied for a district grant, which is money that went to Rotary International that came back through our district to help fund this project. So I just want to tie that link together.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, President Stephen. Like he said, I wanted to give you an update on our food packaging for September 22nd. I've loved the response we've had from the group so far. We've got 33 members signed up currently. I've got a sign-up sheet over here with a list of everybody that's already signed up. We're really looking for 45 to 50 total. Looking for 10 to 15 more people to sign up. If you have a family member that wants to join, or a coworker, or somebody else that just wants to help out, please have them join us. Once again, it's going to be September 22nd. That Saturday morning, we're going to meet here, start at 8:30, and fully plan on being done by 10:30. So as long as we can get in that 45, 50 person range, everything will go smoothly. It's a great cause, and the end result will be great for the club in general. Once again, I've got the sign-up sheet over here. You can email me. We've had my email address up on the screen, or give me a call, whatever you'd like to do, and we'll get it going. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you, Anderson. Thanks for your leadership on that. I know it's taken a lot of your time and effort. And please do sign up. We're running a little bit ahead of schedule. I do want to tell you one thing about our food packing project is we're going to pack 10,000 meals. It's all going to be macaroni and cheese, the same thing. We're going to have 4 or 5 different assembly lines. So all it takes is you to show up with your energy and a smile, drink a little bit of coffee, have a donut, put a hairnet on, and scoop noodles or cheese byproduct or whatever it is that we're going to be putting in these bags and sealing them up. About 6,000 of those meals are going to go to Harvest Hope, who is certainly a partner of ours in this community. We've done many service projects with them in the past. And the remaining 4,000 are going to go to the Backpack Buddies project, which sends food home on the weekends to Richland 1 students who are in need. So that's a great thing. There's a woman named Mel Killoy who heads that up, and she's going to take those meals as well. So this is really putting our money where our mouth is and putting our service to work. So look forward to it. I want to thank Randolph Shives one more time. I don't know, for those of you who were at the social last week, it was such a fun time. We had a great time. I don't know if Randolph's here today or not, but I do want to thank him publicly. It was a great event, and it was very generous of Shives Funeral Home to plan that for us. I also want to make you aware of our new website, which is www.columbiarotaryclub.us. Cynthia Giles has been working on that for the last month or so, and John Backus, bless his heart, was receiving a lot of emails as our club president for the last year and a half when he has not been our club president, because our website was so outdated and it was corrupted and everything else. So we now have a brand new website, ColumbiaRotaryClub.us. Go take a look at it. It looks really good. It's something we can all be proud of. We are going to do a 5-minute table social. So enjoy the time talking to your fellow Rotarians, and then we will introduce our speaker. Thank you. Settle back in. I'm gonna invite Alan Roberson up to introduce our speaker. And as I do, I just want to recognize Alan. Alan hasn't been here for about 6 months or so. He's been on a leave of absence, and today he's back with us, full time and ready to go. So it's always good to have Alan with us. So.
Yeah, and it's great to be back. This has been, for our institution, the South Carolina Confederate Relic and Military Museum, this has been the summer of deadlines. And I knew this was coming, and I won't go into all that we've had to do, and it seems like I was a little more prepared, but we're down to the wire now. I think my last deadline is Wednesday week, so we'll be clear. And then we can look forward to doing stuff, which is starting off with a major exhibit on the 30th Division for the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. 30th Division was a major South Carolina unit. We're going to open that up at the end of October and have it publicize it for Veterans Day. And then we're going to do a major Vietnam War exhibit in March, which will be a lot of fun. As a matter of fact, the only fun I've had all summer was helping put together an M21 mortar, 81mm mortar, that we got for the exhibit, which is a little more complicated than I thought it was. It was a learning experience for me, but that was fun. We also got another employee here, another co-worker, Joe Long. And Stephen was asking Joe how long he's been in the Relic Room. And I was waiting for Joe to say 10 or 12 years, and Joe said 16 years. And it made me even feel older than I am. But Joe is a major part of our program. He is the front face for anybody who walks in the door and for the whole state. He goes out on the road 7 days a week and talks to people about what we do at our museum. He is, like I said, he's been there since 2002. He's got an MA in history from Georgia College and State University in Millersville, Georgia. Has been published in Civil War Historian Magazine, the Journal of South Carolina Historical Society, and elsewhere. He's also appeared in the television shows History Detective, Carolina Stories, and the Travel Channel's Mysteries at the Museum. Joe has written many articles. He's currently working on a biography of Civil War General Maxcy Gray, Maxcy Gray Park. Joe lives with his wife, and as he puts it, small horde of children in KC. He has five children. I have 3, so I know he's insane. His oldest son is one of the outstanding cadets at the Citadel, and I just found out on the way over here that Joe's oldest daughter became engaged over the weekend to be married. Wow. So that's a wonderful thing. Joe's going to talk today on leadership, naval leadership lessons of Captain Von Trapp, without the risk of sinking, as he puts it. Joe?
Always nice to get such a gracious introduction from the boss. It is a pleasure to work at the Relic Room. I hope that you all can make time to come and see us now and again. It's worth it. And I don't know if you all have noticed, it's kind of crossed my radar screen over the last couple of years, that there are people that would like to learn from history, and there are people who would prefer to yell about history. And they aren't always the same people. In fact, they rarely are. Now, we study history, as far as I'm concerned, we study history to understand our neighbor and ourselves. We study history to understand people and how they interact. So where does that leave our specialty of military history? Well, it's been said that wars are God's method of teaching Americans geography, but that's not the main purpose of studying military history, to learn where Guadalcanal is. Rather, like all history, it's about understanding people. But I submit to you, military history may be the single best way to study yourself and your neighbor under stress. People under stress. People making decisions or failing to make decisions, but at very high stakes, in the worst of circumstances, on limited information, while they are angry, frightened, tired, often hungry, often sick. So, to understand people under stress and to see people both at their best and at their worst, military history is a very rich field. And I say all that to introduce the topic of today's talk, who I'm happy to say is one of those, in many ways, great examples of people to learn leadership from under stress. Korvettenkapitän Georg Ludwig von Trapp. You may have heard of the dread of the Adriatic, as he was known in World War I. You probably think of him as Christopher Plummer. This well-known character from one of the most famous and upbeat musicals of all time was a really fascinating guy in real life, somebody that we can learn a lot from. And all Hollywood, the best that Hollywood can do with history, and this is true 50 years ago and it's true today, the best history can be on screen is a nice advertisement to go read good books. Most of what you hear today will be pulled out of a book recently translated into English, but long a bestseller in German, Georg von Trapp's To the Last Salute. An important factor in the life of Georg von Trapp is this decoration, the Military Order of Maria Theresa. The Military Order of Maria Theresa, for all, for purposes of comparison, the Medal of Honor, the Victoria Cross. This is a major national decoration, and since it came from the Austro-Hungarian Empire, it was a decoration that came with a title, Ritter. It became Georg Ritter von Trapp. Ritter meant rider or knight. This was an order of knighthood. And in many ways it defined this man. The folklore about the cross of Maria Theresa, I said folklore, this is not strictly fact. The general impression people had, what they said about this decoration, they said, this is the honor you receive if you made a decision on your own initiative in command that would have gotten you court-martialed if it hadn't worked. It represents extreme risk-taking, calculated risk, but it represents being true to your course, true to your faith, true to your principles. And in many ways that defines Georg von Trapp, as well as, in some ways, his own personal hero. The Austro-Hungarian Empire. Franz Josef is the emperor of this last European empire. And it's an interesting place to live. Austrian units are designated as KUK, Kaiserlich und Königlich, because Austria has an emperor, but Hungary has a king. And some units answer to both the emperor and the king, and they are Kaiserlich und Königlich, and probably so. Other units answer only to the king of Hungary, not to the emperor of Austria. They are merely Königlich. The Emperor of Austria and the King of Hungary get along pretty well because they're the same guy, Franz Josef. However, the Hungarians are very specific that they're not answering to him as emperor, which is not something they really recognize, but as the king. Von Trapp is going to refer to him as the last knight, the last remaining vestige of ideal chivalry. To the young officer growing up, this is the man that he looks up to. He goes to the Austrian Naval Academy in the 1890s. This is not a young man by the time of the events of the movie. And the Austrian Naval Academy seems to cover topics like how to make your ship work. However, they find time for formal instruction in Viennese dancing, and every single midshipman at the Austrian Naval Academy must demonstrate his proficiency with the violin. These softer skills are a big part of what they think naval leadership is all about. Von Trapp first comes to prominence in a scrap around the turn of the century referred to as the Boxer Rebellion in China. Now, there are a lot of factors to the Boxer Rebellion, but to the military personnel like Von Trapp who are sent on the rescue expedition, the primary one is that missionaries and others are forted up under siege and need a military expedition to come rescue them. One of the early steps here is the taking of a couple of forts controlling a harbor, and Von Trapp is decorated for his gallantry in leading Marines in the taking of these forts. He's a traditionalist all of his life. He harkens to the past. And he's an early adopter of new technology. Von Trapp is going to transfer as soon as an opportunity comes up into the brand new idea of the submarine. And the first U-boat that he's going to command is 105 feet long. It has 2 torpedo tubes. It has a crew of 19 men. It's a way a young officer can have something that he's in command of. He'd be a division commander on some larger craft. On this one, he's in charge. It's not too much bigger than a PT boat. It's a lot more dangerous than a PT boat. It's a lot more primitive. And for the Austro-Hungarian Empire, it represents what the submarine was designed for here in South Carolina. It represents a chance in time of war to break a blockade. If a huge superior naval force wants to close off your ports and starve you, the submarine was a way to take out a blockade. So it appeals to his sense of patriotism and strategy as well. Oddly enough, the ship that he will command, the U-boat he will command, is launched by a young lady. Her name is Agatha Whitehead. You remember the song from the movie, How Do You Solve a Problem Like Agatha? No, you don't remember that song. Agatha Whitehead is, as the name sounds, an Englishwoman. She's living in Austria because her father has been hired by the Austrian government to work for their navy. Her father is the inventor of the first to launch that little U-boat you just saw a picture of. A few years later, her husband will be in command of it. Their meeting is very Austrian, very Viennese. He went to a social event where she was playing the violin. Apparently it was way better than his midshipman lessons. He was very impressed. He fell in love with Agatha. Remember, we think of the movie and Maria von Trapp is the love of his life. He's got 7 kids before he meets Maria von Trapp. Those 7 children, by the way, will each be baptized with a flagon of water that he brought home after a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. So when he went over there, he brought some water back for the baptism of his future children. Here is another look at the craft that he's commanding, the SM-5, and I'll skip some technical details on that. One of those things about military history, you ask perhaps why an American Army officer should be sent to study a battle that happened in Greece in the BC years? It's because the brain inside a bronze helmet and the brain inside a Kevlar helmet is the same brain. That the leadership lessons, even though the technology changes, never do. And we've got to look at the deck gun on that little craft. And a picture of his hero, the Emperor, actually inspecting the boat. At the breakout of World War I in 1914, Von Trapp is going to, he's been active Navy the whole time, but he's put in command of a U-boat he had commanded previously a few years before, and given a crew mostly of reservists. He writes, "My new comrades are all familiar. Years ago I sailed with some of these men. Some had served out their time, been home, gotten married, and now stood before me not as young fellows, but mature men." He gives them a little pep talk. "The most important thing is we must be able to rely on one another. I must be able to trust you, and you must be able to trust me if we are to be successful and want to bring our boat back safely each time." Well, one thing that jumps out of the book about the man's personality, I think this is the kind of guy I'd prefer to serve with, because the stories that come out make it clear that he understands and has great affection for and listens to the opinions of his crew. At one point, he tells a petty officer who tells him, "Yes, sir." "Shut up, to hell with your yes, sir. I want to hear your real opinion." This is something that perhaps if most officers did more often, a lot of things might flow more smoothly. There might be a veteran or two in the room who would agree with that. This was a guy who relates incidents, tragic, touching, amusing, about individual men on the boats that he commands that make it clear what kind of commander he is. It also sort of sets him up for a terrible disappointment. You see, on his boats, this multi-ethnic Austro-Hungarian empire sends people from different cultures and languages, and they all get together great on his submarines. The closest thing to the song in the movie Doe, a Deer, Female Deer, a very simple teaching song, his children learned songs from him that were designed to teach non-German speakers in the Navy to learn German, because they had so many of them who came into the Navy and didn't even speak the dominant language of the empire and had to learn enough to make the boat work. But on his boats, there was mutual loyalty, interdependence, no resentment, no fighting, and everybody pulling together for the common mission. Von Trapp sort of had the idea that the entire empire was really like that. He didn't see the fault lines underneath. And that was common to a lot of people of his class. They didn't really see the fault lines underneath the empire until it started to fall apart toward the end of the war. Another thing that he has taken from his hero, the Emperor Franz Josef is a very pious Catholic. And Franz Josef believes it is fully his Christian duty to make sure that Jews are not mistreated in his empire. And Salzburg and Vienna are two of the most comfortable places for European Jews to be during that era. And this is a sensibility that sticks with Von Trapp. There's a guy he keeps mentioning in this book, a petty officer named Gumpelsberger, and he never identifies the group that that man comes from. It took my son talking to some other people in Salzburg and saying, "Oh, what about this Gumpelsberger guy?" Because my son agreed to do a little field research for me while he was doing a semester abroad. Turns out Gumpelsberger is almost certainly a Jewish name from that era. But Von Trapp really doesn't choose to mention that. Something he does talk about, central in his memoirs, is the sinking of a French cruiser, the Leon Gambetta. The Leon Gambetta was the main French naval asset in the Mediterranean. This was the best ship that they had. It was 12,400 feet long. Remember, his boat was what? 105 feet long. 12,400 foot long, 489 feet long, 12,400 tons. There were 821 men aboard. And the Leon Gambetta fell prey to the new technology exactly as the new technology was supposed to work. As Von Trapp describes it, the cruiser comes about. Both torpedoes ready. The last safety device of the projectiles is unfastened. Ready comes back. In the periscope, I can see the cruiser's bow run through the crosshairs. Now the aft stacks come with the most vital point of the ship, the boilers. Starboard torpedo, fire! A quick turn. Port torpedo, fire! This is his entire armament, by the way, his 2 torpedoes. I watch the trail of air bubbles. They run in a straight line at 40 knots to the targets. At 500 meters distance, a big ship can no longer evade them. A dull, hard sound after 10 seconds, a second one, as if a knuckle hit an iron plate. A cloud of smoke shoots high up, far above the topmast. The men in the boat cannot hold back. Hurrah! Hurrah! Somehow they must release the tension. I have difficulty penetrating their enthusiasm to get them to ready the reserve torpedoes. Perhaps the ship still requires a coup de grace. Well, the coup de grace is not required. Only 9 minutes later, the Leon Gambetta is gone. 821 crewmen are on board that day. 684 go down with the ship, including all of the officers. Remember, these are the days when an officer wouldn't get on that lifeboat before the enlisted men. And a rear admiral. And Von Trapp expresses his disgust and dismay that the French Navy have not sent along escorting ships so that there's nobody to pick up the survivors. Remember how small his boat is. There's absolutely nothing he can do about the survivors in the water. He will rant a little while later as the crew celebrates. Say, September102018, our job is horrible. We're like highwaymen sneaking up on an unsuspecting ship in such a cowardly fashion. Where are the days when an old sailboat captain would pass his enemy at a couple of cables' length and greet him from the poop deck? To you, the first blow, when chivalry was in control of warfare. Those days are gone. The last night is our old emperor. But later on he rationalizes. Against the statesmen who work with defamation of character, twist international agreements, and terrorize neutral countries. Compared to those, a U-boat is a pretty respectable guy. The petty officer I spoke of has brought him up short after his little rant by telling him, sir, you're the only one who can see what's going on. The rest of us are fighting a war in which we just have to guess things from expressions on your face and bad lighting. Don't tell us that we're fighting in a cowardly fashion. And this is something that he very much takes to heart. He's going to have a total of 19 war patrols, sinking 58,494 tons of shipping and warships on the enemy side. All of this in U-boats that are several generations back from what the Germans have, which are actually pretty primitive at that time. And the sinking of the Leon Gambetta, that is the exploit for which he's going to be knighted. He's going to get the Cross of Maria Theresa. It's reported even in the New York Times, and remember, we were still neutral when this happened. Received from Lieutenant Von Trapp, commander of the submarine U-5, which sent the cruiser to the bottom. And this is New York Times, May 1st, 1915. And even in this report, Von Trapp says, 9 minutes after the second shot, the ship disappeared. Despite the short interval, the French lowered 5 boats, which are believed to have been saved as the sea was calm. I regret that I was unable to assist in the rescue work. He will be celebrated all over the empire. There's not much of an Austro-Hungarian navy, and this is its prime exploit for all of World War I. When Von Trapp flees Austria for the United States, those are the only 2 decorations that he chooses to save and take with him. One is the Order of Maria Theresa. His next command is a captured French U-boat, which, he remarks, everything tastes of petroleum on this boat. The engine's fuel, breakfast, the first cigarettes, even the pen that a man who's working on the maps puts into his mouth. Even a kiss would taste like petroleum, but that has not been tested on board. There you see him with some of his guys. And his greatest strength is as a personal leader. It's also his biggest heartbreak, and he has two heartbreaks that pile quickly, one on the other. The book is titled To the Last Salute. In German, it's To the Last Salute Volley, the last gun salute. And what he's referring to is literally and physically firing the last salute that was ever fired to the Austro-Hungarian Empire's flag. As the empire fell, as it was lowered for a final ceremonial time, he would be the one who personally waited for the gun salute from the fleet, and lowered the flag of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He came home to his family, who were told, "You must be very kind to Daddy, for he has lost the Navy." You see, after the war, Austria no longer has a coastline, period. There is no Austro-Hungarian Navy. So that's all there is, except for his family, in which he invests everything and which is his great comfort in life. And within a year, Agatha Whitehead has contracted scarlet fever and died. This is a guy who has lost everything at this point. And it will be almost 10 years before Maria, by the way, they called her Gustel, shows up on the scene. Pious and musical. Not so much. She had actually been raised an atheist and a socialist before she went into the nunnery, where apparently they rescued her, nevertheless. It is Georg von Trapp who taught his children music, who had regular musical sessions with them. There was never an interruption in the house. And I'm glad, because that's why one of his granddaughters decided to translate this book into English, to sort of correct people. They thought, well, the movie did a great job showing how great Grandma was, but not my grandfather. He hasn't been portrayed correctly. But there's no doubt that a lot of the joy had gone out of his life. What do you do at this point? Well, one thing you do is write a book. And this book, in German, became required reading for every junior officer in the Austrian military. This was one of the prime war heroes of World War I. Not a small name, but the man who represented the valor of the old empire. What does that mean for him? Well, we can look at another young officer. We've got von Trapp on the right there. The other gentleman fought in the United States-Mexican-American War, becoming one of the great war heroes of that conflict. That gentleman, a West Point graduate by the name of Robert Lee, would command the defeated army in the Great National War, 1861 to 65. Some of you have heard of it. These men would find themselves in a somewhat similar position afterwards. People who are looked at by their own people as heroes and leaders who have earned that leadership currency under the most stress that there could be. As people who have, when they say something, it matters. And both men, in my humble opinion, are going to choose to use that leadership currency not rashly, not recklessly. If R.A. Lee had had a vengeful attitude in the late 1860s and passed that on publicly, we might have had Northern Ireland in this country, and it might have lasted decades, generations, centuries. It lasted centuries in Northern Ireland. Now, Georg von Trapp, he's got people hero worshiping him out of his book, and this is well known when the Anschluss happens. The Anschluss is the attempt to unite all the German-speaking peoples under the leadership of a charismatic man with a small mustache, a certain Adolf Hitler. And what happens with the Anschluss? Well, Nazis were people who did their research, especially on how to manipulate people. And the offer they brought to Georg von Trapp was targeted for him the way that Amazon targets me. They knew what he cared about, they knew what he liked, they knew what he respected, and this was a man who really liked his naval rank, who really valued his noble title, who saw these things as symbols of an older and greater chivalry. And what are they offering him? Well, Georg von Trapp is not a young man. They're not going to put him in a U-boat and send him out to get depth charged. He's going to get a desk job, probably in Berlin, probably with people a lot like him. You look at the upper ranks of the German Navy, there's a lot of Catholics. There's a lot of men who do not care for Herr Hitler. In fact, Admiral Canaris is going to get executed for that reason. You see people that are of his social class would appreciate the Viennese dances, who have read his book and admire him. Everything he would like in a social set. Why not take this prestigious job? And by the way, he was part of an empire of greatness. Here is a man who is going to make a German-speaking empire that gets back that old glory. Not in von Trapp's opinion. The man was literally invited to Hitler's birthday party. He was not an obscure officer that, like, you know, they don't really make it clear in the movie, why did they want my dad? He's not obscure. He's a famous figure. Hitler invites him to his birthday party. That's a pretty big deal. Von Trapp's response is, I have sworn my oath of loyalty to only one emperor. This is a sideways shot at the German military having put a new oath in place where you swear personal loyalty to the Fuhrer. This is a sideways shot at that. I've only given one oath of loyalty in my life, and that was to one emperor. And by the way, it wasn't that guy. Von Trapp knows that what's riding on this is not whether he gets a comfortable desk job and his book sales go up because they become required for the Hitler Youth or something. What's on the plate here is whether the people who look up to him and understand his leadership are going to say, how bad can they be? Von Trapp signed off on them. Von Trapp's an admiral in the German forces. I can certainly enter Hitler's forces. If Georg von Trapp did, he knows this is too much to risk. So, the escape is less dramatic than it happens in the movies, but no less defiant. And when von Trapp got over to the United States, 2 of his sons would serve in the United States Army in World War II, and he himself would act as a consultant, giving new naval officers lectures about U-boat tactics, which they're generally going to see from the other direction. So what do we have to learn from the life of Georg von Trapp? Well, some of it's pretty low-hanging fruit. Don't trust what you watch in the movies. But some of these lessons, I think, are a lot deeper and worth spending some time thinking about. This was a guy whose solid guiding principles in life kept him from being pulled off course by a very tempting offer indeed. Thank you all for listening to me, and please come say hi at the Relic Room sometime. I have a minute or two for questions. I will try to handle them. Yes?
Obviously, I have a great deal of reverence for him as a leader and maybe as a father. Are you trying to get to 70?
I do believe that we're done. I think we've managed it. Yes?
Do you know what the second award was?
The second award, if you will re-ask that question to me by email, I will look it up and make sure that I'm not telling you the wrong thing there. Yes?
You have to register for these lectures that you give, or you just show up?
Nope, just show up. And one side of that flyer that hopefully most of you all have out there gives our Lunch and Learn lectures by a variety of speakers on a variety of topics. And we have at least one coming up that's not on the flyers here. That is David Brinkman's upcoming lecture. Do you recall the date of that one, Alan?
It's going to be, I believe it's October 19th, I guess, is that correct?
That would be tremendous.
I believe so,
October
yeah.
19th. These lectures are going to include a longer but more elementary school oriented version of On Trap Talk, because the other side, the lunch and learn is on one side by a variety of presenters. The flip side, the homeschool Friday sessions, I give those. You do not have to be or bring a child to attend homeschool Fridays. It's just that's who they are aimed for. So, yeah, feel free to come in. Always like having more folks if you'd like to drop by. Yes?
The sinking of the French cruiser, was that because they were blockading? Is that why what was the motivation for sinking the cruiser?
Well, if you look at the Adriatic, yes, it was primarily the blockade. The Austro-Hungarian Navy was in a somewhat similar place to the German Navy. The German Navy was all bottled up, and so was the Austro-Hungarian. The blockade would be incredibly effective, and in fact, one of the darker streaks in here as far as things Von Trapp experiences during the war, he reflects back at one point on how horrible he felt over the sinking of the Leon Gambetta. But at that time, he's been home on leave, and among the things he describes is seeing new mothers who can't produce enough milk for their infants because they're not getting enough food themselves because of the blockade. And he relates how shortly after that, a freighter that he's going after, something goes wrong with one of the torpedoes and the freighter escapes, and he almost becomes enraged, and then he becomes shocked at himself, saying, now I'm angry when I don't sink them. So yeah, the blockade is a very little known sort of aspect of World War I, and it's a really, really important aspect of World War I. The British Navy's dominance there that kept supplies from going in. And then the German Navy saying in return, well, we can blockade you with this new U-boat technology, we just have to do it without giving warnings, and of course that brings the United States in. These things play out in the Adriatic Sea too, but it's a theater of the war we never studied. And the Austro-Hungarian Navy's ships are all pretty much named after Austro-Hungarian Navy ironclads that defeated the Italians in a previous war in 1866. The Austro-Hungarian Navy's traditional enemy is the Italians, and the French are thrown in there too because they're in the general area.
I would just add that when Alan said it was okay for me to bring a friend over to go through the relic room, I was very fortunate to have you give me my tour. And while it's very interesting and certainly appealing to walk through and see everything, nothing can touch the experience with you doing it for us. So if anybody goes there, I would make sure they try to arrange for a tour from you.
Thank you all. I'll give you the payment we agreed upon later. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Joe, thanks for being here. I love the way you tell your story with passion and in an informed way. It really benefits us all. President-elect Louisa, who do we have coming next week?
I'm excited about next week. It's a very personal program for us. Our speaker is going to be Dr. Lily Stern-Filler, and she and I were third grade class together at South Ford Elementary School and have been friends for a long time. She was really smart, actually the smartest girl in the class, and she went on to become a doctor. I took the more social route, but it's worked out well. We're still friends. The most important thing about Lily to know is that she is the daughter of actual Holocaust survivors that immigrated to this country after the war in 1949. They came over, and when her father died in 1999, she sort of assumed the mantle of making sure that we remembered the Holocaust. She is co-chairman of the Columbia Holocaust Education Commission, and she has developed a program called Holocaust Remembered. It's a panel exhibit, and program, which I am so thrilled she is bringing to us next week. You do not want to miss this program, so bring a guest and be here. Thank you.
Great program. Thank you, Louisa. We will forego the singing. Have a great week. Be safe later this week. Thank you very much.